My name is Patsy. I'm standing in the middle of a room filled with the people I once called family, but now, it feels like a battlefield. My father is red-faced, his chair scraping against the floor as he stands up in a rage. You did what? He bellows, his voice reaching a pitch I've rarely heard in my life. It all started when I was promoted to major in the United States Navy. I'd worked my way up through 13 long years of early mornings, tough assignments, and countless night classes. The gold oak leaf on my collar was a symbol of my hard-won achievement. I grew up in a family where my father, Victor, was a strict and traditional man. He'd served in the Navy for 20 years as a petty officer and had a very narrow view of what real service meant. My mother, Lily, was a gentle soul, always trying to keep the peace at home. And my younger brother, Ethan, who was 32, was the apple of my father's eye. Ethan worked as a middleman for a defense subcontractor, and his job seemed to bring in a lot of money. When I invited my family to my promotion ceremony, it was met with coldness. I called home a week before the event. My mother answered the phone, and I could tell my father was nearby. I kept it simple, giving them the date, time, and location of the base, and even offered to book them a place to stay. There was a long pause, and then my father's gruff voice came on the line. We're not going to waste our time on your insignificant little promotion. You're just pushing papers, not doing real work like I did, he said. The word insignificant hit me like a punch in the gut. I'd replayed that sentence in my head so many times. I didn't argue with him. Arguing with my father was like trying to move a mountain. So, I just said, understood, and hung up. That evening, my mother called back. She didn't apologize. Instead, she tried to manage me. Don't make it harder on your father. You know how he is, she said. I did know how he was. I'd spent my whole childhood walking on eggshells around him. The ceremony was held in a small, stuffy conference room. My battalion commander said a few words about my steadiness under pressure. A few of my trusted colleagues stood along the wall. The oak leaf was cold in my hand as I picked it up. Tradition says someone who loves you pins it on, but I'd saved 2 seats in the front row out of habit, not really expecting anyone to show up. And they didn't. My kind-hearted sergeant, Mark, stepped up and pinned the rank on me. After the ceremony, there was some cake and weak coffee. People patted me on the back, and I forced a smile as I answered their questions about my new posting. All the while, my phone lay on the table, silent. No calls from my mother, father, or brother. 2 weeks later, a photograph of me at a Navy event in Washington made the front page of the local paper. I was in my dress uniform, flanked by 2 security officers. The caption carelessly called them my bodyguards. Overnight, it seemed like my family suddenly remembered my phone number. My mother called me at 6 a.m. one morning. Her voice was overly bright. We just think it's time the family got together. It's been too long, she said. I knew something was wrong. I'd spent my new job learning to ask the tough questions early. Mom, I love you, but you don't call me at dawn for a reunion. What's going on with Ethan? There was a long silence on the other end. We need to talk, all of us, as a family. Come out Saturday. Your father wants you there, she finally said. The fact that my father wanted me there told me this was serious. Before I even finished my coffee, my father texted me. Morning, sweetheart, it said. The word sweetheart from him was so out of character. It made me suspicious. Then my sister-in-law, Sarah, sent me a picture of my 6-year-old nephew, Tommy, holding a drawing he'd made. He's been asking when Aunt Patsy is coming, she wrote. The timing was too perfect. I knew they needed something from me. At work, I started to piece things together. I was working in a small oversight unit, making sure the Navy's contracting processes were honest. One afternoon, I saw the name of the prime contractor above Ethan's subcontractor cross my desk. Ethan's firm did almost all its business with this company, and he'd bragged about it at family dinners. I knew I couldn't open the file, as it was part of an active investigation. But I started to connect the dots. The bigger house, the longer vacations, and the expensive watch on Ethan's wrist all made me suspicious. I called a Navy lawyer, Lieutenant Carter, to ask about my obligations if a close relative was involved in a matter I was overseeing. The moment you have a personal connection, you recuse yourself, disclose it in writing, and if anyone asks you to use your position to influence it, you report it, he said. I knew then that whatever my family was going to ask, I couldn't do it. That night, I took out a letter from my grandfather, Henry. He was my mother's father, a quiet man who'd served in the Korean War. He was the only one in my family who'd always supported my service. The day I was commissioned, he gave me this letter and told me to read it when I needed it. I'd read it twice before, and now, I read it again. Rank can be pinned on and taken off. Integrity is the only thing they can't reassign, it said. Those words gave me the strength I needed. On Saturday, I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house. The smell of burnt coffee and motor oil hit me as I pulled into the driveway. Halfway up the drive, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. The whole family is counting on you. I sat in the car for a moment, touching the letter in my pocket. When I walked in, the house was unusually warm. My mother had made my favorite casserole. My father stood up when I entered, which was a rare sight. They all seemed overly nice, and I knew they were setting me up. We ate and made small talk for a while. Then, Ethan finally spoke up. I'm in some trouble, he said. There was a federal investigation into his company's contracting work. He tried to downplay it, using words like technicality and everyone does it. My father then took over. You're in Washington now. You know people. You can make a call and fix this for your brother, he said. Before I answered, I made sure they understood what they were asking. You're asking me to use my official position to interfere with a federal investigation. That's obstruction, a federal crime for me, I said. The room went quiet. Ethan tried to persuade me, saying no one would know. But I stood firm. I would know, and so would the people whose job it is to catch this, I said. My father then started to pressure me. After everything we've done for you, this is how you pay us back. You're hiding behind your rules, he said. My mother chimed in, saying they were just asking me to help. I realized then that my years of silence and being the steady one had been misinterpreted as a reserve of obligation they could draw on. I asked for one night to think, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to handle this correctly. I drove back to base in silence, my mind clear. I knew what I had to do. On Monday, I did exactly what Lieutenant Carter had told me. I disclosed that a relative might be involved in a matter related to my work. I formally recused myself from anything related to Ethan's case. I also reported that my family had asked me to interfere with the investigation. I wrote down the facts, signed the document, and submitted it. For a few days, my family thought I'd agreed to help. My mother called, saying she knew I'd do the right thing. But I let her believe it for a while because I wanted to tell them the truth in person. Mid-week, an investigator contacted me to confirm my recusal. It was a short, uneventful conversation. But it was the moment when I knew I'd done the right thing. My father started telling people I was handling Ethan's situation. My mother let it slip on the phone, and I could hear the pride in her voice. But it was for a crime I had no intention of committing. Then, my mother called again. We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow. Your father wants to thank you properly, she said. I knew it was time to face them. I drove out that Saturday in civilian clothes. I wanted to go as Patsy, the daughter, not the major. On the passenger seat was a manila folder with copies of my disclosure and recusal. I pulled into the driveway and walked into the house. They were all there, waiting. My father greeted me as the fixer. I sat down and placed the folder on the table. When I told them I couldn't do anything for Ethan and explained why, the room exploded. My father called me a traitor, and Ethan said I'd ruined him. My mother put her hands over her mouth in shock, and Sarah used Tommy as a pawn, asking if I wanted him to grow up without a father. I stood my ground. I reminded my father of what he'd said about my promotion ceremony. I'm not going to waste my integrity covering this. I think that makes us even, I said. My mother then spoke quietly, saying she'd only tried to keep the peace. I told her that my silence had never been peace, it was just me losing over and over again. I picked up my coat and walked out of the house. I didn't look back. Months passed. An indictment was eventually unsealed, and I learned about it from the news. Ethan reached an agreement instead of going to trial. As for me, my standing in the Navy was never in question. I kept my posting and my clearance. My family didn't call for a long time. My father never did. My mother reached out once, and I answered kindly but firmly. I finally made peace with the fact that I'd never have the front row family I'd saved those 2 seats for. A few weeks after the meeting, my colleagues took me out for a simple dinner. Sergeant Mark raised a glass and said something kind. I laughed until I cried. That was the celebration I'd truly deserved. The highest rank I ever earned wasn't the one on my collar. It was the day I stopped letting people who didn't appreciate me decide my worth. If there's someone in your life who only uses you when they need something, you have the right to draw a line. Share this story if it resonates with you.